I'm Chris O'Neill from Sew the Distance, and I'm back again with another just one layer cake quilt. This one's gonna be so much fun. I love this fabric. This is called Vintage Soul. It is just yummy. It's so bright and wonderful. I can't wait to show you what we make with this. I'm also gonna be using the Crazier 8 template, and I'm gonna give you lots of tips with this because these can be a little tricky. Even though it doesn't seem like it, they can be. I did not make up a sample of this quilt. I usually do. We'll see how it turns out. It's gonna be bright, that's for sure. I did play with these rulers, however, on some scraps, and I learned a lot from them. All of this stuff came to me from Missouri Star Quilt Company. I recently partnered with them, and a big thank you to them for sending me all of these goodies so I can share them with you. I also have an affiliate link with them if you're interested in ordering anything and getting maybe a little bit of a discount. Let's get started talking about this and how I'm going to approach this project. Before we start though, I forgot. Missouri Star Quilt Company also sent me this wonderful shirt. Isn't it cute? All right, let's get started. Okay, let's open up this pack and see what we have. Okay, so there are 2 of each of these fabrics, and they're together, so you don't have to sort them out, which is nice. All right, here they are. Aren't they great? I love them. This one I'm a little skeptical about, but we're gonna keep it in. You can see it looks like patchwork, but it's printed on here. All of them, maybe with the exception of this one, I love. They're so pretty, and there's different colorways. Like these 2 have 2 different colorways in the set. I love them. They're so cool and old-fashioned and wonderful looking. Okay, so our next step is to pick 5 of the prints. We're gonna do this in sets of 5. I found that when I was doing my samples, it made sense to do it in sets of 5. It just worked out really well. So that's my first tip with using these templates. Not to overdo it. It will get confusing. There's so many weird pieces. So I'm gonna show you exactly how I address that. All right, so our first step, like I said, is to pick 5 of these, and you want sort of a contrast with them, but really it's a crazy quilt, so anything goes. So I'm gonna pick like this one, maybe this one. Let's see. Oh, I love this. All right, let's find something a little lighter, like maybe one of these birds. Oh, let's do this one. This is a nice light color. We already have the birds. Oh, how about this one, this pink? Let's do that. All right, so I have 5 fabrics that are gonna go into 5 crazy quilt blocks. Stick with me, it will make sense. I'm gonna set all of these aside until we're ready to use them. You could cut these all at once if you wanted to, but personally I like to work with 2 or 3 at a time, and I'm just gonna stack them up any which way. It's not gonna matter, okay? The order won't matter at this point. Okay, so my first tip is to have a rotating mat. It really helps. If you do not have a rotating mat, that's okay though. You can use a smaller mat, just something you can turn. If you don't have a smaller mat, you can also use a table that you can walk around, but you are gonna need to be able to get to different angles of this. But before we start cutting our 5 pieces, I just wanna talk about the templates for a minute. The templates have the letters A through E on them. On the templates, they also have the placement of that particular piece. So we have something that looks like this. Now, a couple tips. The letter, when you're using it, should be upright like this. And this is great if you want to make anything with fussy cutting. For example, I made this one where I lined up this bird so it was kind of the focus of this block. And then this one is just scrappy and wonderful. You can see how they come together really nicely. What's awesome about these templates is that they fit together really well. What's not so awesome is if you're using 10-inch squares and not scraps, they can be a little challenging to work with. But I've got you because I got some hacks for you. All right, so I'm gonna move these out of the way for right now and go back to our set of fabric. Now in the instructions, it tells you that if you're using a 10-inch square, you need to measure up 2 inches on one end and 6 3/4 on the other and connect that. Let me show you what I mean. So it has us measure up 2 inches, put a mark just on the edge because that's going to change the angle if we go in too far. Keep that in mind. And then on this side, you go up 6 3/4 of an inch and then connect those two dots. So I place my ruler on each of those two dots and cut. I found this to be a challenging way to do it when I was making my scrappy samples. So I have a better way. I decided that I was going to make templates, which is what I did here. And I also drew on my pieces. The template plastic that I used, I get at the dollar store. It is chopping mats or cutting mats, and they're real flexible and wonderful, and that's what I use. And all I did was cut it into a 10-inch square, and then I did the same thing with the measurements. Now it's kind of hard to see. Let me see, would one of these other ones work better here? Let's get this bird one. Maybe it's easier to see on the bird. All right, so that way I can line this up, mark it, and then cut that angle. And that ensures that the angle's right. I know where placement is because of drawing out the template pieces onto the template just with a Sharpie, and it just made my life a little bit easier. So I can just remove one of them, draw my line, and I know that's my cutting line. The next thing I do is I like to layer no more than like 3 fabrics together at a time, and I know we have 5. You can do 5 if you want, but I feel like every time you cut, they're gonna become a little distorted, the ones underneath. So I'm gonna do 3 of these out of our 5. Let me show you how I cut them. I'm gonna take my template, I'm going to draw my line. That's my cutting line. Line my ruler up, pull it apart, and there you have your 2 pieces. At this point, you can start cutting your template pieces. So let's see, so it's a E rather, and a D, here's the D. And I'm gonna cut this out. You can cut them, slice them this way first. Move this out of the way so you don't accidentally cut it. And then I like to use a small rotary cutter when I'm going around these. And again, I'm just gonna set these aside, trying not to change the orientation of them. A nice sharp blade helps, and also a trash can nearby. You're gonna have lots of little scraps. And then all of these pieces have little notches, which are great for lining them up. And I think I got it all right. Maybe this edge, okay. This is my E piece. Now I also cut pieces of cardboard that I labeled so I can clip the pieces right onto that, just like that. And again, we're gonna be making 5 units at a time because, well, it'll make sense in the next step, but we're going to be rotating them. All right, so I'm going to take this, set it aside, and keep going with these. So stacking 3 at most to cut, and then stacking the other 2 to cut, and then you'll have all of your stacks together. All right, so this one, I'm gonna put it in here like this and cut around it. All right, that's D, my D template, and clip it, just like that, and set that aside. Now I'm gonna take this piece, it's our top portion, and we need A, B, and C. A, B, and C. I like to start with the B unit, so I'm gonna move A aside and just take my big rotary cutter, cut this piece, set this aside, and then just cut around this. And then I don't want to forget these notches. So this is our B unit, my B cardboard. Here's A. I'm gonna do the same thing. Line it up and cut around it. And our final one, you can see it makes a big mess. That's only a couple of these. Take our C, cut around it. That is C. Put that on top and clip it and clean up our mess a bit here. All right, so I have all of our pieces for 3 of these units. They're all clipped and ready to go. It's time to cut the other 2 for the 5 units. 5 template pieces, 5 pieces of fabric. This is gonna be important when we shuffle these up. Same thing, I'm going to take my template that I made, I'm going to mark it, line up my ruler and cut it. And again, cut the pieces. All right, now that I have D done, I'm gonna get my D set, and I'm gonna place that right on top and clip it and set it aside. Next, I'm gonna use the E. And remember, I'm always making sure that letter is upright. It's a real good trick for this, especially if you're using scraps. And I can see that I got a little close to the edge. It's gonna be okay because we're gonna trim the blocks up, but you wanna be mindful of that. All right, so this is E, my E unit. Place it right on top and clip it. And then I'm gonna just keep going with this one, same way. Okay, I've cut these all. I have quite the mess. Let's take a minute and clean these up and meet you back here with our next step. Okay, I did want to mention too, I did start by making templates out of the cardboard that came from the back of a layer cake. Believe it or not, this cardboard's slightly smaller than a 10-inch square, so this didn't work if you're tempted to do it. So keep that in mind. All right, so now we have all of our pieces ready to go. All right, so we're just gonna lay this out exactly as it goes. And if you forget how it goes, the templates all have a picture on it that show you exactly how it goes. So next I'm gonna just take these clips off and then take our paper or cardboard templates off. And they should all be in the same configuration, meaning the layers are exactly the same. Fabric 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the same order. So now the fun begins, or at least I think it's fun. We're gonna take piece A. It actually doesn't matter which piece, just remember where you started. And then I'm going to take the top 1 and put it on the bottom. For B, I'm gonna take the top 2 and put it on the bottom. So it's shuffling it up. For 3, I'm gonna take the top 3 and put it on the bottom. For D, I'm gonna take the top 4 and put it on the bottom, just like that. And this is how they get sewn together, just like this. So you can see now why there are 5 pieces that we use, because we're gonna get 5 blocks just from this, and it's gonna all be different. For example, this will be the top block, this will be the next block, and so on. I'm gonna put this back so we can sew it together. So even if you don't care for one of the blocks, there's another one you'll like. Like even these two are a little close, that's okay, it's gonna be fine. You just kind of go with it because it's a crazy quilt. It's supposed to be crazy. We're gonna take these to the machine to sew them. All right, I have all my pieces here. Yay, they're ready to go. So this is our top row and this is our bottom row, if you can think of it like that. This is A, B, and C, D, and E. We're gonna sew our top row together and then we're gonna sew our bottom row together, press them really well, and then sew the top row to the bottom row. So we're gonna start with the A and take our B, and they should, they do, line up really well. Just with those notches, everything should line up. Once we have that lined up, you can put a pin in there if you want, and we sew. Now I have a gray thread in here, and my stitch length is 2.1. I also have my seam gauge, I want a nice 1/4 inch. All right, so this is our AB unit. We're gonna take our C unit right from the top here, and that gets sewn on here. Again, everything lines up. And this is our top unit. I'm gonna go ahead and press this and then we'll build the bottom unit. Okay, the top unit is done. Now I'm gonna make the bottom. So I'm gonna take my D and E unit, line them up, and sew. And press this. It doesn't matter which direction you press these in. There are no intersections that will intersect, so it's not gonna matter. Okay, here's the top unit and the bottom unit. I'm gonna set this aside, and these go together like this. And they should line up, and they do, yay! Woohoo, I love when that happens. And there's our first block. I'm gonna give it a good press. Okay, so I have the rest to do. Now you could chain piece these and do like all of A and B at once and then add C and all of that wonderful stuff. For me, I get so confused and things get mixed up, so I don't do it that way. I do one block at a time like this, and then I will go square them up. Now you can do it however you want, however, there's no quilting police, okay? I promise, nobody will come at you. After I get all of these done, the rest of these blocks, so I'll have 5 in total, I will show you how to square these up and talk about some variations too. Okay, so I have all 5 of these blocks and look how pretty. Oh my goodness, I love them. Now we are going to square them up. They should measure 8.5 inches. When I did my samples, I really struggled to get them to go to 8.5 inches. Part of the reason might have been my seam allowance, who knows? But also because there are so many stretchy edges, things pull, who knows what happened there. But I do know this, that this is a crazy quilt and I can trim it down to whatever size I want, even if I want to go real small, that's fine. So my suggestion is to go to 8 1/4. Now look at that. That one is almost perfect. Of course, that's my luck, right? Oh no, it's not up here. Okay, so I'm gonna go to, let's see, you know, I could do 8 1/4, but I really think it's best to do 8 inches. So I'm going to cut this side first. So I'm gonna cut the right and the top. And I'm gonna make sure that this 8-inch line, that my fabric is past that. Could even go a little bit more because then I'll have an even edge. It doesn't matter though, because it's a crazy quilt. Now hold my ruler, cut, and we're gonna rotate the mat since I have a rotating mat. Get that. I'm gonna put this back like this. I'm gonna pick up my block, take my upper right corner and move it to my lower left. And then I'm gonna line up my 8 inches on my ruler. I'm not using my mat. You could if you want to, but I find the ruler is a little bit more accurate because these get ridges in them and move and all kinds of stuff. All right, that's an 8-inch block. And I'm just trimming it down. Oh my goodness. Look how beautiful. I'm gonna do that to the rest of these. And actually, I have a set that I made in the meantime. Right here. Move this out of the way. And you can see how wonderful these look too. Oh my goodness, look at them. They're gonna look so pretty together. I love it. Oh my goodness. Do it, and then you can turn them which way you want. Like, I don't know, like that maybe? I don't know. But once they're all done, we'll have some really wonderful ways to do this and tons of variations, which is awesome. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do this with the rest of my blocks. Now, as far as the stacking of 5 fabrics, you can do as many as you'd like. If you want to stack this whole thing up, that's absolutely fine. It's up to you. I like to work in batches, which is why I like to do the 5. For me, it just makes the task a little bit more manageable, and I can also work in small periods of time, which is always nice too. Pardon this interruption, but while I was editing the video, I realized I forgot to mention a really critical step. If you're making 42 blocks, which there's 42 layer cake squares in a layer cake, so 42 doesn't divide by 5 evenly, right? So as you get to the end of your stacks of 5, you're gonna have to adjust that and maybe do 6 and then kind of play with them, you know. You can have duplicate fabrics in a block, just make sure they're spread apart. It's just something you have to play with because it's not an easily divisible amount, if that makes sense. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. I'm gonna go ahead and finish all of these blocks up and meet you back here when they're all done. Cannot wait. They're all done. Oh, I'm so excited. They're so great. I love them. So I did have a miscut and I had to pull some fabric from my stash to make up the difference because I messed up, of course, 5 blocks because I did 5 at a time. That's the downside. I found this fabric that has little yo-yos printed on it. I just felt it went perfectly with the set. So there are a few of those sprinkled in. It happens, you adjust, right? That's the best part about quilting, in my opinion. You gotta think on your feet and kind of make some decisions. So I'm gonna lay these out. I'm going to show you a few variations, however, because I think it would be a disservice if I didn't. So I'm going to lay these up on my design board. Okay, so here it is. You can see most of it. It's a little, crooked just because it's not sewn together. But you can see how cool it is. I mean, it's so bright and wonderful. I love it. It's wild and crazy. And as far as layout, you just have to decide what you're comfortable with. Do you want colors close together? Do you want them far apart? Like, for example, I can see a lot of this pink. I might separate them and just play with it and turn it and do all that. You also can have some really cool designs with this, other than this cool design, by putting the points together. So you can see that here in this picture. See how you can get a really cool layout if you wanted to do it that way, which is a lot of fun too. Now, when I first finished these blocks and I started playing with the layout, because of course I did a little dry run to see how they look together. So excited about it. I started also playing with the polka dot fabric that I got because this was originally going to be an inner border. However, I decided to play with it. So I'm going to take a few of these down just so I have some room so I can show you exactly what happened. So this probably wasn't the smartest move because I had my design in my head, but just like anything, I like to play with the designs and see, can I make it better, different, whatever it may be. So I decided to see what the blocks would look like if I used the polka dot fabric as a sashing. I'm gonna put that up here and show you what happens. By the way, this is called auditioning fabrics if you've ever done it or ever seen it done, just like you'd be auditioning, of course, for like a part in a play. And I'm sure many of you knew that already, but some of you may not. You can see how all of a sudden this came to life. And when I was playing with it, I was like, oh, dang it, why'd I even try it? Because I kind of had my vision. And also because I said this is a 1 layer cake quilt, I really don't want to add the sashing because I want to stay true to that. But if you're making this, this would be a great alternative. Isn't this incredible? Like, it just, I don't know, it brings it to life. I love the navy blue. It's a little wild, it's a little crazy, but it's also a little wonderful. Okay, so it's back up here, probably not the same way it was, but it's up here, and it's so bright and wonderful and cheerful. I do like the polka dots, but I do like this too, and I think it's gonna turn out just amazing. The bright colors just make me happy. I usually leave things up on my design wall for a couple hours at the very least, if not a couple days. And I'll play with it as I walk by. I'll turn things, change things. I don't have to worry about it as much with this one just because it is crazy and I like that. But I might, you know, flip some things around. Like, I'm not a fan of these two fabrics being together, so I'll keep twisting and turning until I get a layout I like, something like that. Once I get a layout I like, I will sew the rows together. There are 7 rows. So I'll sew the top row, and then the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. And I'll make sure that I alternate how I press them. So the top row I'll press, say, to the right, and then the next one to the left and to the right. And that way when I put them together, they'll nest into place. After I figure out a design I like, I will start sewing these all together, and then I'll meet you back here with this portion sewn together, and we'll talk about how you do borders. Okay, it's finished. Oh, I love it. It's the next day, by the way. I didn't do this like all in one day, just so you know. I love it. It's stunning, and I love that every step of quilting just changes it. It makes it so much better, because when you have anything sewn together like this, it elevates it. And then the quilting, and then the borders, if you put them on, whatever, it just always is elevating. Love that. All right, so let's just talk a moment about borders. And I got a few different options from Missouri Star when they sent me all the stuff. I have some of them here, and it's so hard to tell online what's gonna look right, and that kind of happened to me. These two here that I have that I put on mini bolts, I got 1/2 yards of each of those. These are from the fabric line. The polka dot is not, it's a Riley Blake fabric. I'm gonna just show you what this looks like. Now, since my design board's not that big, I'm gonna have to do some adjusting, but you're still gonna get a good idea of what these look like, and we're gonna audition some, and then I'm gonna talk to you about how to measure for your borders, and then we'll start to plan to finish the quilt. Okay, so I folded in one end. We're gonna work on this side. Actually, I'm gonna scoot it over a little so you can see. There we go. And I'm gonna show you the different options that I have. And of course, there's a ton of different options you could use. So this is the navy dot, which I love. And if I put this up here, you can get an idea of what it looks like as a border. And you can also adjust, let me move, I'll get over here. And you can also adjust the size. The rule of thumb is half the size of the block for your borders, but we all break rules, and it is your quilt. You can do whatever you want. If you want a 10-inch border, go for it, whatever you want. So, you know, you can play with it, use a tape measure, see what works best. You can see if you want double borders, single borders. So let me show you a different one. Okay, so here's a double border. Now I think this is too busy, but I could try it on the other side, see if I like that. Okay, I like that more because this breaks it up a little bit. I don't know, this is nice too. Let me see another option. So I have this fabric, which if we put that here, oh, I really like that a lot. So playing with this is super important when you're designing a quilt, in my opinion, because I haven't cut any fabric yet. And I can just kind of lay it out and see and audition it and really get an idea and a feel for it. Now, personally, I don't think I'm putting borders on this, but I can do the same exact thing that I just did by auditioning this for the binding. And let me show you what I mean, because I think I'm going to use this navy as a binding. Okay, here it is with the binding. And I think that's going to frame it really well. Now, the problem, or the issue, is it's not going to be a very big quilt. This quilt for me is not meant to be on a bed or anything. I'm actually going to put it on my porch this summer and just have it as a nice little comfort thing if it gets chilly on an evening night or something like that. So I'm not really worried about the size. If you are, you definitely would want to add some borders or even add some more blocks. If I were to put borders on it, however, I do want to give a little lesson on that. Let me grab the fabric, the big piece I have. And I cut this small piece because I was trying the sashing, and also I wanted to do this demonstration for you, but I do have 2 yards of this. So fabric has a grain, which if you've watched my channel long enough, you know. Selvage to selvage, or the edges that has all the information on it, is usually around 44 inches. It depends on the maker. And that's real stretchy. See how that stretches? Yardage, when you go cut side to cut side, so this is coming off the bolt, like this. So when you buy yardage, it does not have a stretch. Okay, see how that doesn't, turn it around. That doesn't stretch. This really stretches. Okay, and it's the way the weave is. There's technical names for it. I'm not gonna get into all that because it's really not that important. The most stretchy part, of course, is our bias. And that's the diagonal. When you're putting borders on, there's two rules of thought. Some people believe in cutting this way, where it's stretchy, because then you can ease in some seams maybe that aren't right, but it's also stretchy, so it's going to distort as you quilt it. Other people, like myself, like to cut borders this way. So I'll cut the length of fabric to get my borders because there's no stretch, and it will take all these bias edges and lock them into place. However you do it, however, there are other rules or other things that it will make your life easier. Are these things that you have to follow? Absolutely not. This is your quilt. You can do whatever you want, however you want to do it. But I find this makes it easier if you're quilting or if you're even sending it to a long arm, the long armer is going to thank you. So let's talk about measuring for borders. Now, usually I do this on a table, but for YouTube purposes, I'm going to show you how I would do it like this. I would measure the center of the quilt, so like this, all the way down, and that gives me 54 inches, okay? And then I'm gonna measure here, all the way down. That gives me 53 and a half. Now that wasn't planned because I did not know it was gonna be a little uneven. And then I'll measure here. And like I said, it's easier on a table. And that is 53 and a half. So there was something with my bias or with sewing, whatever, that was a little off. I take those numbers and average them, and that gives me the length of my borders. I cut those borders exactly to that length, that average length. I do not sew them on and then cut them off, because if you do that, you're gonna get some waves. Is waving important? It's really up to you. For me, I find it annoying if I fold up a quilt and it's not quite square. Other people don't, so you can just skip this whole part and move ahead. I have chapters in this so you can check ahead, but for me it does. I do the exact same thing with the width of my quilt. So I'll measure the center and then 2/3 or 1/3 or whatever. I'll just break it up and then I'll take the average of that size to get my top and bottom borders. That's how I do it. Is it the right way? No. There's no right way, okay? Nobody cares if you do it whatever way you do it. Maybe your long armer might care, but overall, nobody's going to come at you. This is just the way I do it, and I like to share how I do it, and you can make the decision from there on how you want to do it. So I hope this helps. All right, I'm going to take this off the wall. I'm going to sandwich it, meaning I'm going to put my backing on. Speaking of backing, oh my goodness, let me get it. I didn't show you the backing yet. I love the backing. Let me grab it. Look at this. Oh my goodness. All right, so I'm going to use this as a backing. It's going to be a little challenging because I got to line these up a little bit to make sure they're straight. And I'll put up on the screen, I can't remember how much backing I got. I did use a chart in one of those wonderful books that have all the charts that you need. Highly recommend them. I've had mine for years. It helps so much because then I can figure out exactly how much backing I need for this. Here, I can't wait. Oh! And we're going to sandwich it. Let's do it. Okay, so I have the quilt finished. It's here, and I'll show you that in a moment. But I just want to talk you through how exactly I did it. And I just sped up this video. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer any of them. So I started by laying the backing right side down on a flat surface. And then I put the batting and I make sure that it's the right side down. And that just depends on whatever batting you use, whether there's a scrim or not. This is warm and natural and there isn't a scrim. So you put like the seeds or the chunky side up. Then I am laying the quilt top on top with it wrong side down. You can see that here. And that takes a little bit. This whole process took me probably a good 45 minutes to get everything straight and flat. Next, I'm using a basting spray. I sometimes use it, sometimes not. Sometimes it gums up my needle. I did it for this, and I know I do it wrong. I like to spray baste the top to the batting, and then I go in and spray baste the batting to the backing. This works for me, but there are so many ways to make a quilt. When I'm basting the batting, I spray it onto the batting and then smooth it out. And I just keep smoothing as I go. And then I'm doing the other side. The next step is to use pins. I like to do both. I like to spray baste when I spray baste, and I also like to use basting pins too. And I'm just putting one in the center of each of the 42 blocks. It takes a little bit of time, but what's nice is once it is spray basted, I feel comfortable moving it around freely and it doesn't shift because it is kind of sticky. This just gives me some extra reinforcement, and you can see that here. I also like to use the quick clip tool or something. I'll put a picture of that up. It's one of my favorites. Now the next step, everybody's gonna balk at, but I like to hand baste with thread around the edges and keep it straight. Next, I'm gonna square up the quilt, and I just take a ruler, cut those corners, and I like to measure in from the block and make sure that I have a nice consistent edge. This helps me with binding, so I have a nice miter, and it just straightens everything up nicely. Sometimes quilting can distort the blocks too, so this just gives me a chance to get everything square and right. Next, I'll take a very long ruler and lay it along that edge and cut, and I make sure, again, it's nice and straight, and just keep going, and I'll do that on all 4 sides. That's it. It's not really scientific, it's probably not the right way, but it's the way I do it, and it works for me. And finally, we're to the quilting. I just did straight stitch quilting. I did kind of a plaid design on this. Very simple, used my walking foot. I used a pink thread that's kind of shiny on the top, and then I used a navy thread for the bobbin, so it blended in with the backing. And I just keep going. And I have my binding here. I just used 2.5-inch strips, attached them in the diagonal, and then folded them over and pressed them. And then I'm sewing the binding on. I mark the corner 1/4 inch in, and then fold the binding corners and keep going all the way around. I press it really well, press it out, get rid of some of the threads. I'm doing that the whole time. And then I flip it to the back and I hand stitch it down, and I just make sure that I don't go through to the front. And I'm just using a quick whip stitch to hand stitch that binding down. That's actually my favorite part. So there you have it. That's the whole construction of this quilt. I still have to put a label on it. I'm going to show you the quilt in a minute, but I still need to put a label on it. I do need a name. What am I going to call this quilt? I don't have the name yet. That's why I haven't done that part yet. But here it is, the big reveal. Oh my goodness. Look at that navy. Isn't that cool? I love how this turned out. Isn't it incredible? Oh, and then the backing. Oh, the backing took a little bit to get lined up, okay? I wanted it straight, and that did take a bit. And here is a close-up of the quilting. It's not perfect. I am not a perfect quilter, but it is going to do, and I love the pink, and I love how this feels. So I do need to put, like I said, a label. I need a name for this, and then I also have to wash it and get it all crinkly and wonderful. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if there's anything you need to know about this, any questions or anything like that. I will have a ton of information on my blog too, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And again, a big thank you to Missouri Star Quilt Company for all of the stuff so I can have this wonderful quilt. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you take some time to sew, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.